Welcome to The Fight on Matrix Midwest with Randy Carricker.
Hi, kids, and welcome to the show. Great to have you with us on a Monday. Coming up in The Fight, history in Cardinal Nation, a brouhaha over the number 5, and we take a trip around the horn with news and notes from Major League Baseball. But first, it's time for your quick hit, sponsored by St. Luke's.
The pitch, a swing, and there's a drive, and that's hit well to right field. That's deep to right. That ball is gone. That ball is gone. Unbelievable. 3 at-bats in the big leagues. 3 home runs for Joshua Baez. A 3-run lead for the Cardinals. He is homer to center, homer to left, homer to right. Oh, my goodness.
Swing, drive, well hit right. Suzuki back. It is gone. It is gone. It is gone. 3 homers for Baez. Major League history at Wrigley Field.
The Saturday calls from John Rooney on KMOX and the Cardinal Network, and of course Chip Carey, our friend of the show here on Cardinals.tv. Josh Baez is the talk of the baseball world after debuting with a 3-homer game against the Cubs on Saturday. 1 to center, 1 to left, 1 to right. The Cardinals have done a great job of not rushing guys to the majors this year, and sometimes it works out like it did in Baez's first game, although he did go 0 for 5 with 3 strikeouts yesterday. But sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes you have to give a guy a little time, like Jimmy Crooks having just a 564 OPS in the majors after turning in a 980 at Memphis this year. But hopefully Baez will be the guy to lengthen the Cardinal lineup. After Lars Nootbaar's departure, the Cardinals can win with the top 4 of J.J. Weatherholt, Ivan Herrera, Alec Burleson, and Jordan Walker. Add Baez to the mix and get a guy like Crooks hitting. Then all of a sudden you have Mason Wynn hitting 7th, the third baseman, whoever that might be, hitting 8th, and the center fielder hitting 9th, and that has a chance. Even better for next year, send Herrera to Florida with Jose Oquendo to learn how to play third during the offseason. It also seems with their, it might take a while to look at Everson Pereira. It would make sense to do so. He's 25. You know, Pereira had a career 857 OPS in 8 minor league seasons. He can play center field. The Cardinals might have to find one there, too, a good player. But suddenly, 23-year-old Josh Baez has turned into a possible key for the Cardinal future. All right, let's turn to golf because another dominant performance over the weekend. This one from Scotty Scheffler. He reasserted his dominance of the PGA Tour with a resounding 8-stroke victory at the FedEx St. Jude Classic in Memphis. The top 70 golfers in the world, and he dominated the other ones. Scotty was one of just 2 golfers to post sub-70 rounds, and in the last 3 days, he went 61, 68, 66 to finish things off at 17 under. Scotty has 2 wins this year, 5 runner-up finishes, and 4 more top 4s. And he could finish last here in St. Louis and at the FedEx Cup Championship in Atlanta in 2 weeks and still finish as the season's point leader. Jordan Spieth, who will have gone a decade without a major championship starting next season, didn't have a top 10 finish this season and didn't finish in the top 50 to play here in St. Louis next week. Daniel Berger and Shane Lowry also missed the cut. Rory McIlroy finished 66th this weekend, but he's 13th in points and will play at Belle Reve at the BMW Championship this week. But let's get back to Scotty Scheffler because we saw greatness from 1997 really through 2012 or 2013 with Tiger Woods. And we are seeing something similar with the dominance that Scotty Scheffler is exhibiting against the best of the best. It's one thing to win a tournament by 8 strokes when you win the John Deere or the 3M or something like that. But when you're playing against the other 69 top golfers in the world and you're dominating them, that says something about your prowess, and that's where Scotty Scheffler is right now. And for those that have tickets to head out to the BMW Championship this coming weekend at Belle Reve, take it in and enjoy it because you aren't going to get many chances to see somebody at the absolute top of their game in any sport like you'll see with Scotty Scheffler this coming weekend. It was not a good offensive start for the Kansas City Chiefs players that we won't see in September anyway. Backup Justin Fields, 4 of 4 on his only drive. We didn't see Patrick Mahomes or Travis Kelce or Kenneth Walker or the starting offensive line. So 5th-round rookie running back Emmett Johnson got a dozen carries and looked good. Overall on offense, though, there wasn't much to take out of this one. Garrett Nussmeier outplayed Chris Oladukin for the battle for the 3rd quarterback spot. With all the departures in the secondary, the young DBs looked good. Corners Jadon Kennedy and Noel Williams played well. So did safety Jaden Hicks. You know, This game was really pretty boring. And I hate the idea of season ticket holders having to pay for preseason games as a part of their season ticket package. You only have 1 or 2 preseason games at home these days anyway, but still, it sucks to have to pay to watch guys who aren't going to be on the team and pay $100 to do it. Here's an idea for the NFL. Why not try to serve your unserved markets in the preseason? Try to build interest and maybe rebuild a bridge to fans in St. Louis and Oakland and San Diego, or start in Birmingham or Portland or Boise. Charge $5 a ticket and try to build some regional loyalty for a team. That way, you don't stick it to your own season ticket holders, your own business partners, just like you're doing with Europe and Australia, but ultimately, you'll be doing it here in America. You'll let some Americans see those NFL helmets live. I think that's a great idea, and I think, Roger Goodell, you're watching. I think you should take a look at that. All right, I'm a numbers guy, as you might know. Excuse me, as you might know. And I care about and remember numbers. And I even think Jaden Daniels representatives are being petty by sending a cease and desist letter to LSU asking them not to use his name, image, or likeness because they issued his number 5 to another player. Well, quarterback DJ Pickett was promised that he could wear number 5 at LSU during his recruiting process, so he's rightfully being able to wear it. However, Daniels thinks he should own that number at LSU now because he won a Heisman Trophy with there. Well, Daniels also played 3 years at Arizona State and 2 at LSU. They barely remember what number he wore at LSU, and now that the football program can't use his name, image, or likeness, it'll be a footnote. Sure, he won a Heisman Trophy. Great. But they can't show him on their big screen at the stadium during games now. They can't use his NIL. They can't build a statue. They took all of the Daniels jerseys out of the team store and off of their website. And Pickett will probably be a first-round pick in a couple of years anyway. If the new guy wearing 5 wins a national championship, like Joe Burrow did in 9 and Jamar Chase did in 1, he'll be the number 5 that they remember, not a quarterback for a 9-3 team. 9-3 doesn't get you remembered or legendary at LSU. And I'm not so sure that Jaden Daniels is behind this. You know, his mom is his agent and the person that really drives all of the behind-the-scenes material with Jaden Daniels. I would not be surprised if the lawyer was hired by the mom and she's the one that was upset that number 5 was issued at LSU, because Jaden Daniels didn't seem very nonplussed at all by the fact that somebody else was wearing 5. He said, hey, I'm worried about what I'm doing here in number 5 in Washington. In a WNBA matchup of first overall picks, Caitlin Clark's Indiana Fever knocked off Paige Bueckers' Dallas Wings, the 9th best guard in the league as voted by her peers. Clark scored or assisted on 51% of the Fever's points. Bueckers, who also finished with 6 assists and 6 rebounds, fared almost identically, scoring or assisting on 50% of the Wings' points. The first half, low scoring for 2 of the league's top offenses, with the Wings leading at halftime. But Clark and Bueckers took over in the third, trading buckets and eliciting cheers from the sellout crowd in Indy. Each finished with 29 points, and Clark had her 7th game this season with 25 points and 10 assists. That's more of those games than any other player has in their career. Clark has 13. Here's Clark's teammate, Tiasha Harris, who came off the bench to go 5 of 5 from three-point land.
I mean, I'm at all watching CC play. Sometimes it's like it's normal, and it's not. So it's just great to be on her side officially this year. But, I mean, like you said, I'm a vet. You got to stay ready whenever your number's called. And my number was called today, and I went perfect, so it felt great.
The Fever beat the New York Liberty yesterday, and they now have the best record in the WNBA Eastern Conference. And we said last week, hey, WNBA media needs to talk more about basketball. Well, we aren't really WNBA media, but we're talking about WNBA basketball. We're talking about the best player. Yes, she is the best guard in the league. Come on, other players. Drop the jealousy, and let's start appreciating what you have. Let's start appreciating the fact that you have a golden goose and a 1 of 1 in Caitlin Clark. As it says on the bottom there, she's unprecedented, and she is, if you're playing against her, she is inevitable. All right, those are your quick hits, and they are brought to you by our friends at St. Luke's. Top-notch doctors in everything from heart health to orthopedics and more. Visit stlukes-stl.com today. Later in the show, we have our daily wager for you, and we'll tell you who we're mad at this morning because we didn't win this weekend. That's later in the fight. But coming up next, we have a trip around the horn. News and notes from baseball next in the fight. It was a newsy weekend in baseball, so we've got a trip around the horn for you, and we're going to start with the Cincinnati Reds. They have lost their ace, Hunter Greene, not only for the rest of this season, but likely next season as well. He underwent his second Tommy John surgery after doctors discovered that he had damage to his right elbow that was too extensive for them to opt for a less invasive internal brace procedure that could have allowed him to return for action the second half of next season. The expected recovery time for the full elbow reconstruction, as you know with Tommy John surgery, is 12 to 18 months, which would probably mean he wouldn't return to the mound until the start of the 2028 season. The 27-year-old Greene is one of the hardest throwing pitchers in baseball, but injuries have been a problem for him throughout his major league career. If they could ever get him healthy, Greene and Chase Burns would be one of the most dynamic 1-2 punches in baseball. The Reds considered trading Greene at the deadline, and now they have to hope that their investment pays off despite him missing virtually the 2 full years with injuries, and he's also obviously missed another one with his previous Tommy John surgery. What a shame, because he is an electrifying pitcher. He's got great stuff when he's healthy, but he just can't stay healthy. So Hunter Greene had his second Tommy John and will miss the rest of this year and all of 2027. All right, let's move on to second base. And MLB Pipeline has 3 Cardinals in their new top 100 prospects. Joshua Baez was number 59. He probably won't go back to the minors anytime soon. Raniel Rodriguez is number 18 and Liam Doyle 44. The Dodgers have 6 of the top 100. That's tied for the most in baseball with the Marlins and the Mariners. And of course, those 6 Dodgers are from everywhere. They only used a draft choice on one of them. Isn't this incredible? Number 6 overall, Joshua DePaula, was born in Brooklyn but moved to the Dominican Republic, and L.A. signed him as an international free agent. Number 16 overall, outfielder Mike Sirota, was acquired from the Reds in the Gavin Lux trade. Outfielder Eduardo Quintero, an international from Venezuela. Number 24, Emil Morales, signed as a free agent out of the Dominican. Number 36, right-hander Christian Zazueta, acquired from the Yankees for current Cardinal Caleb Ferguson. And number 87, the draft choice, outfielder Charles Davillan, was taken with a supplemental first-rounder number 41 last year. So, again, the Dodgers have 6 of the top 100 prospects, and they only used a draft choice on one of them, and they acquired 2 in trades. The top prospect is Brewer shortstop Jesus Made. He should join the big league club next season. The top 4 prospects and 7 of the top 11 are shortstops. One other fun note, the Mariners have a great rotation, arguably the best in the American League, and 2 of the top 8 prospects in all of baseball are Mariners starting pitchers. Lefty Cade Anderson is 5th, right-hander Ryan Sloan is 8th, so think about that. They had to trade Luis Castillo because they had too many pitchers at the major league level. When you have a starting rotation that includes the likes of what they have, and you know Brian Wu is having a rough year on the road, but he's really good. Logan Gilbert is fantastic. They just have a great group, but they had to trade Castillo so that they could not have an overload of starting pitchers. Well, they got 2 more on the way that'll be ready next season, 2 of the top 8 prospects in all of baseball. So at some point, the Mariners are either going to have to trade starting pitchers or have some walk as free agents so that they can get everybody into their rotation. All right, third base, and what a disappointing season in Seattle overall. Last year, the Mariners took Toronto to Game 7 of the ALCS and lost that game 4-3 when the Jays scored 3 runs in the bottom of the 7th to win. That's how close Seattle was to going to their first World Series. Well, coming off of that run and a 90-win regular season and having the best rotation in the American League in a weakened division, it was completely reasonable for Mariners fans to dream of their first World Series. Randy Arozarena was back, Josh Naylor was back, Julio Rodriguez was back, and they added Brendan Donovan from the Cardinals, and the linchpin was back. Cal Raleigh led the league in both homers with 60 and RBIs with 125, and he had a .948 OPS, which led to Raleigh finishing second to Aaron Judge in the American League MVP voting. There have been 10 instances in which a player has hit at least 60 homers in a season. Raleigh, last year, one of them. No one has hit fewer than 32 the following season, with an injured Mark McGwire being the 32-homer guy with the 2000 Cardinals. Well, this year, Raleigh has 12 homers with less than 50 games left and an American League lowest .556 OPS while hitting .158. If he would hit 158, it would be the lowest batting average by a qualifying player in modern-day baseball history, eclipsing Chris Davis's 168 batting average in 2018 for the Baltimore Orioles. And the Mariners are 8 games under 500, and they're 5 behind division-leading Houston in the division. But here's the good news. Here's the sunshine and lollipops for Seattle. They have the 3rd best starters ERA in the American League. They have the 6th best ERA overall. Of course, we won't mention the bullpen ERA of 4 being only 8th best. And Seattle has the 2nd easiest schedule of all of baseball left on their schedule. Only Cleveland has it easier the rest of the way. So it's not over for the Mariners, but they better get it going, and it'll be easier to get it going if Cal Raleigh can get it going. Can a guy hitting 158 all of a sudden get hot after 110, 120 games? He's played 90. I don't know. Can Julio Rodriguez get it going? Can Brendan Donovan be enough of a difference maker, because he was hurt until this month? Can he be enough of a difference maker that he sparks Seattle's offense? Their pitching is fine. They're capable of going on a run with that starting pitching, but they're a team that needs to manufacture a few runs. They need to get things going. But if they do, they're good enough to catch up to Houston. They're good enough to hold off the Texas Rangers, who are 2nd in that division. I don't think there's any doubt that the Mariners, of all teams in that division, are most capable of winning 12 of 14, 17 out of 20, and shooting their way into first place and then having a chance once the postseason starts. But it has been a rugged go for the 2026 Seattle Mariners, who had really high expectations at the beginning of the season. All right, let's move to home plate, where we got a great note from our friend of the show, Bob Nightingale at USA Today. MLB is about to set a new record for the fewest complete games in a season. There have only been 15 complete games entering Saturday, with the record low of 28 set in 2024. So we are well on our way to having the lowest total ever. With only 2 complete games all of July in Major League Baseball, starting pitchers are averaging a record low 5.03 innings per game. Incredible, considering there were 302 complete games as recently as 1998. And that was with people hitting home runs right and left. We mentioned in a show last week that Juan Marichal had 52 shutouts in his career, and the top 10 right now have combined for only 50. But to me, the big thing is that with pitchers averaging only 5 innings a start, the pitching pairing that you'd pay to see is gone. Wainwright, Arrieta, we don't have that now. Carpenter, Halladay, don't have it. Tudor, Gooden, nope. Andujar, Valenzuela, what pitching pairing are we going to see that we're willing to pay for? You know, throughout my entire life, when they would advertise a pitching pairing, I'd say, I want to go watch that guy start. Well, now, if you're only going to see him for 5 innings and then you're going to see 4 relievers the rest of the way, what's the point of paying for a ticket to go watch a pitcher that you love for only 5 innings? You know, the Pirates just shut Paul Skeens down. Jacob Mizrachi has maxed out at 7 innings this year. 6 times in 23 starts that he has gone 7 innings. He's done it, but only 6 times in 23 starts. Yoshi Yamamoto has won of the complete games and has actually gone at least 7 innings 9 times. But the workhorse starter is a thing of the past. And it's not on the pitchers. It's on the it's on the math people, not the baseball people, that look at baseball as a math item rather than a sports item. If they looked at it as a sports item with a well-conditioned, well-trained athlete, like maybe John Smoltz or Chris Carpenter or Roy Halladay, we might see more complete games. But the numbers people in charge think this is better than having Hall of Fame quality starting pitchers. So it is what it is. Now, there's no chance of us ever getting back to that level either, because as soon as you start throwing starting pitchers 110, 115, 120 pitches in the minor leagues, their agent is going to call the team and say, nope, my guy only goes 100. We're trying to keep him healthy. But you know what? Even though you're trying to keep guys at 100 pitches, they're still undergoing Tommy John surgery. You aren't keeping anybody healthy by limiting them to 100 pitches. What they need to do is what Whitey Herzog had his starters do back in the 80s, or what Leo Mazzoni had his starters do back in the 90s. Play catch every day. Play long toss. Have a program where your pitchers are throwing every day and they have the stamina and ability to throw a lot of pitches and get through a lineup a third time and throw a complete game. Otherwise, we're going to have this where the complete game is a thing of the past. And right now, the complete game is a thing of the past. All right, that is our trip around the horn for Major League Baseball. And that leads us to our takes on the weekend in the sport. Start with the amazing City SC. They did it again. They went on the road and they handled the San Jose Earthquakes 3-1. Simon Betcher with the brace, including the winner in the 55th minute. City with 7 shots on goal, and San Jose only had 1. City right now is sitting in great place. They have the 10-match unbeaten string. They're alone in 6th in the West, 1 point behind Dallas. City visits Sporting KC on Wednesday, so they have a chance against a struggling Sporting KC team to move into 5th in the conference. Who would have thought that with the way things started, that City SC would get to where they are now with the 10-game unbeaten string? And I know that there is a lot of consternation out of the transfers that occurred right before this game. And yes, it's hard to incorporate new people. It's hard to lose some of your best players. They did, and they still won. So Yohan DeMay, credit to you. The players, credit to you guys. And let's see if City SC can keep it going against Sporting KC on Wednesday night. Quick turnaround for City SC. And Mizzou heads into their 3rd week of practice this week. Eli Drinkwitz pretty much anointing Kansas State transfer Luke Work as the starter at right tackle, saying the Tigers are now trying to figure out who their 3rd tackle is going to be, so that's good news. Drinkwitz also gave an update, if you can call it that, on the status of running back Ahmad Hardy.
Yeah, he's still continuing to do rehab. Nothing really to note. I misspoke then if I said that, because it was really a 5-week block. The 22nd is when we should have that would be the first 5 weeks where we'll sit down with the doctors and evaluate where he's at. So right now he's just, he was out there this afternoon cheering on his teammates. He still is able to get in the walkthrough stuff, but he's progressing in the weight room and in his speed training. And
we have to remember that Ahmad Hardy hasn't had an off-season program. He hasn't had any football-related activities. And we're talking about the 22nd, which would be next Saturday, talking to the doctors about whether or not he can start that stuff. And Mizzou opens up September 3rd against Arkansas Pine Bluff. So is there going to be enough time for Hardy to get into football condition by September 3rd? Maybe you get him in there for a carry, but then you just work him up. And he's going to have to go through an off-season program. He's going to have to go through training camp. And it's going to be different than everybody else, but he's going to have to get himself into football shape. So I wouldn't expect that we would see premium Ahmad Hardy until we get to the SEC season, if we see him that way again at all. And by the way, it was a minimum of 5 weeks that Drink was talking about, 5 to 8 weeks to get him to a point where he can physically start doing those football-related activities. So that's interesting to keep in mind about Ahmad Hardy. They do like what they see from Jamal Roberts. He was able to take a day off on Sunday so that they could get a look at some of the other running backs. And they do like the other running backs. And it's really important that Luke Work is in there at right tackle, because now they have an offensive line that they can have work together, develop a cohesive unit, and have those guys ready to rock and roll by the time they play Arkansas Pine Bluff on September 3rd. All right, those are your weekend highlights here in the fight. Coming up with the list, we've got Josh Baez game on Saturday. We've got the best Cardinal debuts of all time next in the fight. It is time for the list, and Josh Baez may have had the best Major League debut ever on Saturday with his 3-home run performance at Wrigley Field. But who are the other best Cardinal debuts of the free agency era, the last 50 years? We've got them for you, and we're going to start with a little exacta. Number 6, Keith McDonald and Chris Richard. On July 4th and July 17th of 2000, each of those two guys homered in their first Major League at-bats. McDonald had been in the Cardinal system for 7 years and was surprised when they called him up. And then he hits this one against the Reds, amazingly, and it is out of here. He'd also homer in his second at-bat 3 days later and have only 3 more Major League at-bats after his second game. McDonald's entire Major League career spanned 12 days, and it wound up being 2 home runs, and he hit .429 in his Major League career. And then Chris Richard. He was drafted by the Cardinals in 1995, homered in this, his first game on July 17th of 2000 at Minnesota. He was traded later in that season to the Orioles for Mike Timlin and actually wound up spending about 9 years in Major League Baseball. We thought Chris Richard was going to be pretty good, and the Cardinals, they kind of replaced him with Will Clark that season. He was on the Major League roster. He wound up having an okay career, but Will Clark was way more valuable for the Cardinals. All right, Richard and McDonald, number 6. Let's move to number 5. And what a debut for Michael McGreevy. I had forgotten about this, but 2 years ago against Texas, the former Cardinal first rounder made his debut at home against the Rangers. And man, was he great on a nice warm day at the ballpark, wearing the jersey with the small lettering. Okay, look at McGreevy here when he turns around and you get to see the small lettering. And I can't believe Major League Baseball allowed this to happen, but they did. The jerseys were bad, but McGreevy was great that day. Okay, so there you go. You see the little tiny lettering. You can barely see it if you're in the stands. But he's taking on the defending world champions, and he goes 7 innings in his first start. He allowed only 1 run on 5 hits in those 7 innings. He struck out 3 and walked 1, pitched to contact, used his defense. He doesn't get a ton of love because he doesn't throw 99 miles an hour, but he gets the job done. And since the start against the Rangers on July 31st of 2024, McGreevy has a 3.70 ERA in 43 big league starts. He's become a really good major league pitcher. I think you could argue that he's on his way to being great, but his debut, one of the half dozen best that we've had for the Cardinals in the last 50 years. All right, number 4, and this one's bittersweet. It was Oscar Taveras on May 31st of 2014. Cardinals finally brought the mega prospect Taveras to the big leagues, and he had been hitting .318 with an .872 OPS at Memphis and was described by John Mozeliak to me as, he said, a left-handed Vladimir Guerrero Sr. And on a rainy day at Busch against the Giants, Taveras made his major league debut spectacular with a dramatic home run through the rain. Oscar would only hit 2 more home runs for the Cardinals in 248 more at-bats. At their postseason press conference, Cardinals manager Mike Matheny said that he thought Taveras was going to be a star for a long time in Major League Baseball. But less than a month later, Taveras died in a car accident in the Dominican Republic. But what a spectacular day that was. I was sitting right behind the visitors' dugout on that day, and the rain made it all the more spectacular and serene and wonderful. And what a day that was. And we just lost him way too soon. What a great hitter Oscar Taveras would have been, and what a debut he had in his first game. All right, number 3, Vince Coleman, April 18th of 1985. Willie McGee got hurt, and Cardinal general manager Dal Maxville called up Coleman to fill in.
When he came up, I said, you're only going to be here now 4 or 5 games. I don't want you to be disappointed if we send you back down. You understand that? And he said, yes, I understand that, but I'm going to be here the whole year. And I said, well, Vince, now, I want you to have a lot of confidence and everything else, but you're only going to be here for 4, 5, 6 days until Willie's better, and then you'll go back to AAA and get your work in. You understand? He said, yes, sir, Mr. Maxville, I understand that, but I'm going to be here all year.
Swinging on a line drive into the right field corner. Base hit. Cardinals take the lead. Coleman goes for second. Coleman flies for third. Coleman is safe with his 4th hit of the night.
Vince would go on to bat leadoff for the National League champions. He'd score 107 runs and steal a rookie record 110 bases. Not only did he have a great debut, but he had a great rookie season, won Rookie of the Year in the National League in 1985. Got started a little bit late, and they didn't think he was going to stick around long, but he sure did. Stayed with the Cardinals for a few years and never went down to the minors again after that conversation with Dal Maxville. All right, number 2, May 30th of 2013, Michael Wacha, the Cardinals' first-round draft pick out of Texas A&M, roared through the Cardinal system to make his major league debut in less than a year of minor league ball. And against Kansas City on this night, Wacha gave the Cardinals 7 innings, 2 hits. He allowed 1 run. He didn't walk anybody, and he struck out 6. Unfortunately, Mitchell Boggs wasn't able to hold the lead, and the Cardinals lost. But before the season was over, Wacha would go 8 2/3 no-hit innings against Washington in his final regular season start that year. Then he'd star in the playoffs, going 4-1 with a 2.64 ERA in his 5 starts in the postseason, and he won NLCS MVP honors. What a debut it was for Michael Wacha. And number 1, Danny Cox. Called up on August 6, 1983, Cox's first start was against the eventual World Series champion Phillies, and it was against future Hall of Famer Steve Carlton. All Cox did was pitch 10 shutout innings, allowing 7 hits, 2 walks, and striking out 8. Unfortunately for Danny and the Cardinals, Carlton went 9 shutout innings himself, and in the 11th, Von Hayes delivered an RBI hit against Bruce Sutter to win the game for Philly, but this was the start of a stellar career for Danny Cox, one of the really tough pitchers in Major League Baseball. We talked earlier about complete games. He did not like being taken out of games, and he was as tough and as durable as they came. And of course, the next year, Danny would win 2 years later, would win 18 games and throw more than 250 innings for the Cardinals as they won the National League pennant. Danny Cox had the best Cardinal debut until Josh Baez on Saturday of any Cardinal in the area. Or in the era of the last 50 years. All of those were pretty darn good, but man, it'll be hard to beat Baez's Major League debut in Cardinal history in the near or distant future. That is the list here in The Fight. And coming up, we have the Daily Wager for you, and we're going to tell you what happened over the weekend with our most recent wager here on Matrix Midwest. Hey, I know that as we get past the really hot weather, you'll want to be getting outside. And if you want to get outside, but you don't feel physically ready for it because your knees hurt or your hips hurt or you have a joint injury, I want you to learn about the orthopedics people at St. Luke's because they are the best in the business. If you have sore knees and you know that you need knee replacements or sore hips and you know that at some point you're going to have to get that joint replaced, you might as well get it done ASAP because everybody that I've ever talked to that's had that joint replacement says, man, I wish I would have done it earlier. And at St. Luke's, they have state-of-the-art equipment. They have state-of-the-art tools to make sure that the process for you is as convenient and pain-free as it can possibly be. And they have expert doctors that know how to use those resources to make you get back in the game as soon as possible. And the rehab people are also absolutely wonderful. So if you get a knee or a hip replacement or any sort of joint replacement, a shoulder at St. Luke's, you're going to be back on the beam within about 8 weeks with those hips and joints. You'll be able to go for a walk. You'll be able to play pickleball. You'll be able to play golf, and you will feel great. It really is a difference maker and a life changer for you. Get in touch with my friends at St. Luke's. Find them on the web at stlukes-stl.com. Okay, it's time for our daily wager, but I got to tell you what happened over the weekend because it made me very angry. It tends to happen on parlays, by the way. So in our last show, we bet on Scotty Scheffler to finish top 5 at the FedEx St. Jude Classic, and he won. Check. We also bet on Matt Fitzpatrick to finish in the top 20. Matt finished 12th. He's taking care of us. Check. But we also bet on Rory McIlroy to finish in the top 10. Easy, right? One of the best golfers in the world. He'll easily finish in the top 10. He finished 66 out of 70. That's why we don't do parlays very often on this show anymore, because it's really hard. And Rory, and we know you're watching, Rory's in St. Louis, not very happy with you right now. Okay, so we're going to try it again. We're going to give you another bet, but we're not going to do a parlay. And this might seem high-flying to you, but it's really not. This is a really good bet. So tonight, you've got the A's taking on Michael Wacha, the former Cardinal. We saw him earlier with his Cardinal debut, and the Kansas City Royals. So Michael's pitching for KC. The A's have lost most of their good hitters. They've lost Nick Kurtz for the season. They've lost Tyler Soderstrom for the season. They've lost Shea Langoliers for the season. Most of their good hitters are hurt. So, and they're really bad. They're very good at all. So we've got Michael Wacha here to get 7+ strikeouts at plus 374. Plus 374 if he gets 7+ against the A's. Now, Michael is pitching well, averages 7 strikeouts per 9 innings, but he's going against the A's. So let's keep that in mind. So let's put plus 374 for 7+ strikeouts on Michael Wacha, and then let's put $100 on it and see what happens if our old friend can come through for us. Hold on, let's try this again here. We're not doing very well. Randy's got to do better. Here we go. Boom. Okay, so we're going to get $474. Actually, I gave us $1,000, so we're not going to do that. So So we'll put $100 and we get $474 back because Michael's going to strike out 7 at plus 374 and we get $474 back. How about that? That's a pretty darn good bet. Keep an eye on the Royals and the A's tonight. Michael Wacha, 7+ strikeouts. That is your daily wager here in the fight. Coming up, we've got today's fun fact. We've got story time with Uncle Randy, and we've got this date in sports history. Stick around. It is time for today's fun fact, and so this happened Saturday. Giants quarterback Jackson Dart drilled by Jay Ward of the Vikings. Dart got up and continued the drive after getting sacked here, and he played it out until the end. But then after the drive, the doctors brought him into a place that he's quite familiar with, the blue injury tent.
As far as the blue tent, like I really respect the rules and the thought behind, NFL has of keeping players healthy and reviewing things, but at the same time, I'm still puzzled by it just feeling like every time that I get hit, I just find my way in there, which at times I still try to wrap my head around, but that's all that I'm going to say about that situation. I'm really happy with how the drive ended.
And the drive did end with a score, but they are just trying to protect the one quarterback that resides in the tri-state region, Jackson. That's all. They just don't want you to be injured at all. And I guess if you bang your helmet on the turf, they don't want to take any chances. So I understand where the NFL is coming from. I appreciate his frustration in being a tough quarterback and wanting to get out there and play the whole time and not having to deal with the hassle of getting tested for a concussion. But that is the sport that you play. That is the business that you're in. Better to be safe than sorry, because can you imagine if you had a concussion and they didn't find it and then you couldn't find your way home? Chris Miller, who was the first quarterback for the St. Louis Rams here, played in LA with the Rams in 1994 and actually had to retire for a while because of concussions, wound up coming back. But before he came to St. Louis, after a game in Los Angeles, Chris Miller was driving home and he couldn't remember how to get home because he was so severely concussed. So he had to call his wife and ask for directions as to how to return to the house that he lived in. So that's a problem. And the NFL is trying to be proactive in making sure that a quarterback like Jackson Dart doesn't have to run into those sorts of problems. So while I get it, I have mixed emotions about it. I would come down on the side of safety for the player, which is where the NFL is right now. I don't think the NFL would if they had not been sued in the concussion lawsuit, but that's where they are right now. All right, time for story time with Uncle Randy, and Director Tyler is going to spin the wheel for a decade from My Sports Fandom. Then we'll get a sport for you, and I will come up with a little story. So here we go. We're going to look at the 1990s. And we've got some basketball, 1990s basketball. Okay, so let's go back to, this is so easy and so fun. And last week we talked a little bit about Clyde Drexler, and we talked about Jordan coming back in that 55-point game. But you know what was interesting in coming back after the Michael dynasty is that we kind of forget that we went right into the Spurs dynasty, and they won 5 championships. And I saw Tim Duncan play against SLU in the NCAA tournament. And I thought, okay, nice player, but I didn't think top pick in the draft player. So David Robinson gets hurt, and the Spurs, who were a really good team if they had David Robinson, wind up getting the first pick in the draft, and they wind up taking Tim Duncan. And right after Jordan's Bulls won their string of championships, 6 in 8 years when Michael wasn't playing baseball, then it became the San Antonio Spurs with Duncan and a healthy David Robinson. And while Shaq was the big diesel and he called himself the big fundamental, and he was the most dominant player in the NBA, once Tim Duncan got drafted in 1998, he wasn't the most dominant player, but he was the most fundamentally sound big man and made all the difference in the world for that San Antonio franchise. And when you look at what he was able to accomplish playing the 4 or the 5, he's an easy first ballot Hall of Famer. He was a multi-term champion, and he was, at times, even though people weren't saying it, the best player in the NBA because he had the size, Duncan had the athletic ability, and he had the fundamental wherewithal and ability to take over a game. And I think historically, Duncan, because he wasn't as dominant as a Shaq or as spectacular as a LeBron or a Kobe, I think historically he's almost underrated. But man, that injury to David Robinson really benefited the San Antonio Spurs for a long time because of the presence of Tim Duncan. So sometimes an injury can help you out. You know, I really thought that would happen, by the way, most recently with the Warriors. Remember when they got the second pick because Steph Curry was injured? I think Curry had a bad wrist and missed an entire season. And they had the second pick in the draft, and they wound up with a big man from Memphis named James Wiseman, who had barely played. He was injured in his 1 year at Memphis, and he was an extraordinarily highly regarded athlete coming out of high school. But he never turned into the player that obviously the Spurs thought, or the Warriors thought they were going to get with the second pick in the draft. And the first pick in that draft was Anthony Edwards. You weren't going to be able to get him. And it wasn't like the Warriors missed out on a massive difference maker after James Wiseman. But my point is, here you had a dynastic team that had the opportunity to maybe continue the dynasty for a little bit longer if they would have gotten that guy. And they wound up taking James Wiseman, and it wound up being a worthless pick for them. Another team that happened for, by the way, was the 1986 Celtics when they took Len Bias out of Maryland. Len Bias, Larry Bird said that Len Bias was better than he was. Maybe Larry Bird was being humble, but Len Bias, right after the draft, overdosed on cocaine and passed away and was never able to, obviously, extend that Celtics dynasty either. All right, time for this date in sports history. And on this date in 1999, the Cardinals sent Jose Jimenez to AAA Memphis less than 2 months after a no-hitter against Arizona. He joined Bobo Holloman, a former St. Louis Brown, as the only pitcher to go to the minors in the same year in which he pitched a no-hitter. Not only did Jimenez have this no-hitter against Arizona, but then he came home and in his next start at home, he faced Randy Johnson again. He had beaten Randy Johnson, who had thrown, I believe, a one-hitter in his victory. This was a 1-0 win for the Cardinals. And so Jimenez pitches the no-hitter, comes home and outduels Johnson again, this time throwing a one-hit shutout. And then obviously things fell apart after the one-hit shutout to beat Randy Johnson. And Jimenez, after that year, actually wound up getting traded to the Colorado Rockies. That was the deal with Manny Ibar and several others, in which the Cardinals were able to get Darryl Kyle. And this guy had a ton of talent, just couldn't put it together on a consistent basis as a starter for the Cardinals. Wound up saving 41 games for Colorado a few years later, and then wound up his career with Cleveland. But he and Manny Ibar were guys that the Cardinals would not trade because they had so much ability. And the Cardinals thought, oh, these are going to be #1 quality starters. They turned down a deal. They could have gotten the great Kevin Brown for Ibar from Miami, but turned it down because they thought Ibar was going to turn out to be great. He didn't. And neither did Jimenez, despite the great no-hitter. There's a lot of random no-hitters out there in Major League Baseball history, and that was one of them. 2 months after his no-hitting the Arizona Diamondbacks, Jose Jimenez, the former Cardinal, finds himself in the minor leagues. Two guys that's happened to throw a no-hitter in the major leagues at one point and then wind up in the minors that same year. And by the way, that's another trade with the Rockies the Cardinals made. Think about the Cardinals' history with Colorado, or like one mark away from Colorado. They get Darryl Kyle from them. They get Larry Walker from them in 2004. In 2009, after they had traded Matt Holliday to Oakland, they get Holliday from Oakland months after he had been traded by Colorado, and then obviously the Nolan Arenado deal too. The Cardinals over the years have made a lot of good deals for them with Colorado, so now they just have to make the next one. So Jose Jimenez, this date in sports history. All right, we want you to know that we got a lot of cool things coming out here on Matrix Midwest, and one of the great things about our fastball program is that if you missed something big, you can see it again. Yesterday, we had the Baez 3-home run game in a 1-hour condensed version of the previous day's Cardinal game. And every day at noon and 4 o'clock on days after the Cardinals are on Cardinals.tv, You can see that game here on Matrix Midwest. It's a really highly produced, it's a great show, 1 hour condensed version of the previous day's Cardinal game, and you can see it here on Matrix Midwest at noon and 4. And this week, as the Cardinals play a bunch of games against the Cincinnati Reds, you'll be able to see those games here on Fastball. And then if you ever miss us, you can catch our show on matrixmidwest.com or on the Matrix Midwest app, where you can listen to our podcast in your car. Just download the Matrix Midwest app or find us anywhere you find your podcast, and then you can Bluetooth this show in your car, listen, and find out what we're talking about, and then you don't have to see my mug every day either. We're on, of course, every day at 5 p.m. and 10 p.m., and then coming up soon, it'll still be on this channel, but we're going to be at 6:30. That's going to happen on September 1st, and we're going to talk more about that as we get closer to it. We do have Jay Delsing coming up, by the way, this afternoon at 5 and tonight at 10, getting us ready for the BMW Championship. So our friend and former PGA pro Jay Delsing will be with us, and we want you to be around for that tonight at 5 and 10, and then tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock. Also, search for First Alert 4 on wherever you stream, whether it's Roku, Fire TV, YouTube, and we're on every night there live at 7 p.m. So plenty of ways to consume The Fight. And you need to email me to get on The Fight. We record it at noon on Wednesdays. The email address at thefight@matrixmidwest.com. And we always need players. So if you're watching now and you've always wanted to take me on in The Fight, this is a great time to do it. You can also find us on the web at matrixmidwest.com. Use the drop-down menu, The Fight with Randy Carricker. There's a form there to fill out, and you can participate in The Fight there too. Hey, we've had a great time, and we hope you have as well. It was fun going around the horn with you. And don't forget Jay Delsing coming up later on. And then tomorrow we're going to talk a little O.J. Anderson, getting him into the Hall of Fame. For our outstanding director, Tyler Klaus, I'm Randy Carricker. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time in The Fight. So long, everyone.